before we start today's masterclass, why to how in product management, I'd like to give you all a brief about Pragmatic Leaders. We built Pragmatic Leaders as a bridge for mid career technology professionals to confidently change roles or careers. We are on a journey to link training to employment and build holistically better alternatives to colored alternatives in specialized technology business roles like product, growth, marketing, and more. We run pay after placement programs in product management for working professionals looking to transition or upskill that are completely online and case study based, taught by global industry leaders. Our unique approach has resulted in 79% placement success with an average 50% salary hike for our learners who are now building products for companies like PayPal, Paytm, Walmart Labs, Amazon, Carbago, LimeRoad, and more. You can check out our programs on our website www.pragmaticleaders.io. I'll be adding the link of the website in the chat section. We have with us Anupam Yashvardhan. He is a group product manager at Meesho and growth product manager at Facebook. Hi Anupam, hope
Hi Priyanka, hi everybody. Hope everybody's doing fine.
welcome to the session. So Anupam has 9+ years of work experience across domains of product management, data science, growth marketing. Previously, he has worked with Hike, Zibong, Facebook, Airtel, and Docvity. Today, he'll be speaking on the topic how to develop your thought process to work in the problem space. Okay, so over to you, Anupam.
Sure, thank you so much. Yeah, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so as she mentioned, this is the topic of the discussion. So, how to develop your thought process to work in the problem space. And so she's already spoken about me, so I will not delve into these details further. Yeah, so 1 second. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with an urban legend, just to give some context on why why the problem space is important in the first place, and why is so much importance given to it. So 1 second. I'm having some issues with my system. 1 second. Yeah. So if you can see this on screen, then this is one of the most famous pens of all time. So any guesses as to why this pen is so famous?
It's a space pen.
Correct. So it's a space pen. I'm just trying to move to the next slide. 1 second. I think I'm having some issues with the keyboard. So yeah, so this is the indeed this is the space pen developed for NASA in 1966. So regular pens, they didn't work in space since the ink cannot flow without gravity. Correct. So the space pen cartridge, it was pressurized with nitrogen, and this helped push the ink towards the pen tip. And the R&D cost for the same was close to 1 million back in 1966. This is like close to 9 million in 2021. So for NASA, maybe it not be a big price to pay, but in general, like it's a big amount. So that is what they spent back then. Now, 1 second. At that point, the space race was on. So this is in the middle of the 60s, right? So the US and the USSR at that time, they were competing for dominance globally, and space was yet another frontier. And so the Americans had kind of solved this problem using a space pen. So guess what the Russians did? Anybody? So one second.
Actually, to use the pencil.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, the Russians or the Soviets, as they were back then, they simply used pencils. And if you compare these two approaches, right? So the problem was that now the Americans, their problem statement was existing pens, they don't work in space. So then they define the problem as we need a pen which can work in space. Uh, on the other hand, we had the Russians who simply said we need to write in space. That is the problem statement. And if you look at the outcomes, the Americans, they ended up spending millions to build this, and it took several years as well. Uh, on the other hand, the Russians, they did not incur any costs. So this is the importance of kind of identifying the problem correctly and then defining the problem statement correctly. So as you can see over here, if you're still not convinced, one second. Before that, so just a disclaimer, this is a popular urban legend. It may not be factually correct, but yeah, it's kind of it's very useful to illustrate the importance of defining the problem statement correctly, right? So if you're still not convinced, here's Einstein on problem solving. So even Einstein recommends that you spend most of the time in just trying to understand the problem rather than thinking about solutions. So that again kind of underscores the importance of the problem space. Yeah, one second. So yes, next slide is about the problem space versus the solution space. So what exactly is the problem space, right? So the problem space is all about understanding the problem and defining the problem statement. So here initially, your scope will kind of expand. You'll try to think of all the problems which are out there, and then post that you're trying to kind of validate these problems and also group them. So then your scope converges, and you come up with a problem statement. Post this, it moves to the solution space where you will ideate solutions, you'll come up with designs, you'll come up with prototypes, you'll test them, and you'll reiterate and so on and so forth. However, it's not a it's not a sequential process. It just ends here. It posts this the feedback you get from the solution, right? That again feeds back into the problem space. We'll cover that later though. So this is the problem space and the solution space. Yes. The problem space, it has four components. So the first one is identifying the target audience. The primary target audience is generally known by PMs and promoters, but there could be secondary audiences out there which you haven't covered yet, who may be using a product or who might be interested in using what you're building, right? So then post this, it's about identifying their problems, their motivations, their needs. The next step is validating these problems, the motivations and needs again, and finally defining use cases to address these problems. So these are the four components of the problem space. Right. So now this is a very popular technique which I would again recommend to kind of understand users and their needs. So asking the five W's and H, right? So the first one is, who is this person? Who is my user, right? The demographic information. So this would be age, gender, so on and so forth. Their goals, desires, fears, so on and so forth again. Uh, what do they do, right? What are their habits? Where do they work? And what are their hobbies, so on and so forth. Uh, Next one would be, where do they do it? So do they do these activities at home, at work, in transit, restaurants, and when do they do it? So the actual time, or is it after a certain event? Now these things could of course vary with what you're trying to build overall, right? So what your overall kind of your sort of broad idea is for your product. So again, it depends on like seeking relevant information is generally more useful, but it's good to have an overall understanding of the user as well. Post this, why do they do it, right? Why do users take certain actions in their daily lives, and why do they kind of do these things, and what sort of satisfaction do they derive out of these pieces? So that's also important to know. Just kind of getting deep into the user psychology. The more you understand a user, the better solutions you can craft. Finally, their mode of action. So how do they actually do it, right? So if they are engaging in certain activities right now, how are they actually doing it, right? It could be maybe uploading photos, or it could be, just engaging with people on social networks, so on and so forth. So yeah, so these are some of the questions which you should ask to get a deeper understanding of users and their needs, right? Yeah, post this. Again, this technique can also be used to understand user problems and stakeholder requirements. So as a product manager, you will get requirements from your stakeholders, and they could be your clients, they could be internal folks, they could even be users. So you will get these requirements from various places. So again, it's very important to ask who is facing this problem, what is the problem they're facing, where do they face the problem, right? When do they face the problem, and why do they face the problem? Why is it important for them to solve it? So knowing all of these things is essential. And how do they face it? How do they solve it currently? So this will tell you about, this will kind of give you an insight into the competition and how maybe users are using the existing products currently or the competing products currently. And that will also kind of give you an insight as to what things matter, and maybe where are the shortcomings in these products. So all of these pieces are very vital. So yeah, next, you have open-ended surveys, which can be a very good way to identify current problems with existing products, right? So let's say you already have a product out in the market. So generally asking, like taking such surveys helps. So maybe starting with how was your experience, good or bad? That's not really open-ended, but post this, all the questions are open-ended. So if let's say the user responds good, then the next question in the survey could be, what did you like most? Let this be a free text question. Let the user kind of just elaborate on what they liked about the product. Uh, Similarly, if they've had a bad experience, so what do they dislike most, right? So a free text question again here. So these pieces help. They'll bring out insights which, let's say, if you were to do an MCQ survey, you would not get. So it's always good to start with a wide scope first, just to get kind of just get a sense of what sort of problems might be out there, right? Because sometimes it's not easy to guess what problems are out there. So, and then finally, how can we improve further? So you will get some suggestions here. Now again, like implementing what users are suggesting directly may not make a lot of sense, but it kind of it'll help you try. It might help you identify the problem they're facing. You can again, perhaps if people are proposing a certain thing, you can interview them further and just try to understand why they want that thing. So it's always good to get to the root of the problem, right? So that's it. And yeah, MCQ surveys, these can be used to validate the qualitative insights you've got. So all the stuff you've done previously, so you can carry out these surveys just to get a sense of how big a problem is for the user. So let's say if it's an e-commerce site, right? So this sort of survey is helpful in identifying like what is the biggest problem for the user. So just for example sake, I've listed here product quality, maybe it's the website or the app experience. It could be high prices, delivery time. So you get a sense of what users really care about, right? If there's a product already out there, maybe, and if it's not out there, even in that case, you can target potential users and just try to get a sense of, if they're so if they let's say have a certain type of use case, what really matters for them in that case, right? Again, internal data analysis can help if your product is already out there. That will also help you further validate what you found in these qualitative insights. So, and finally, you have use case definition. So once you've gone through all of those phases, uh, you can kind of come up with a list of use cases which will be passed on to the solution phase. So the solution phase, as I had mentioned over here, this was about designing the piece, so ideating, prototyping, testing, so on and so forth. So this last piece, uh, use cases, is the kind of the bridge between these two spaces, the problem space and the solution space. So here, just to give this example, so for this webinar tool, as a user, after joining the call, right, I should be able to do do the following things. This list is it's not exhaustive, but it's just to kind of illustrate what this phase is about. So let's say you should be able to view the video feed, turn off the mic, the camera, invite other folks, exchange comments, close the call, of course, refer call notes later. So this is something which is missing from Hangouts, right? You can't refer call notes. This is there, and so on and so forth. There could be other cases. So yes, that's kind of it from my side.